Ian Vanderwalker is on the line with us. He's the counsel, the attorney for the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center for Justice, author of the report Election 2016 Spending. New report just out, BrennanCenter.org, of course, is the website. You can tweet him at Brennan Center, three N's, BRENNAN Center. Ian, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Tell us about that. Well, let me set this up. It seems to me that we have three major political parties in this country, setting aside the Greens and the Libertarians, who are, clearly minor political parties. And I'm using my metric for defining major is the number of offices they have, the number of staff they have, the number of people they have on the ground, the amount of money they spend on elections and campaigns. And one of those three parties is virtually unknown to the American people and never, to the best of my knowledge, discussed on corporate television. Am I close to something here?
Yes. I mean, in terms of the spending, we're definitely seeing the political network of the Koch brothers expand its spending to rival that of the two major parties.
So the Koch brothers have essentially set up, through Americans for Prosperity and a number of other groups, which has more offices on the ground than the RNC, has more employees than the RNC, and has a bigger budget than the RNC, and has a better database than the RNC. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that. They've set up a shadow political party in this country. How did we get to this point without anybody knowing about it?
Well, the Kochs have, had a long history of trying to move politics according to their ideology. But what the real turning point of the way they are active in politics now was Citizens United and the expansion of outside spending through super PACs and nonprofits that can accept unlimited money from individuals and businesses and spend unlimited money in elections. And it's through those vehicles, a super PAC and, as you mentioned, Americans for Prosperity, which is a nonprofit tax-exempt group, that they have spent tens of millions of dollars in elections this year, focused mostly on the Senate.
So how does that compare with what the Republican Party is spending, since they're both pushing in the same direction, arguably? Or are
right.
they?
I mean, the Koch network does support exclusively Republicans, but not all Republicans. There are some Republicans that they disagree with. I mean, in terms of the percentages of outside spending that we're looking at, and the key, the really important Senate races where all the money is, the Republican Party committee, that is the National Republican Senatorial Committee, spent about 8% of the money, and the Koch network, their super PACs and nonprofits, together spent 13% of the money. So they have outspent the Republican Party committee, although the Republicans are also making use of super PACs and nonprofits, and those groups have spent far more, something like 16% of outside spending.
Wow. So, I'm just obsessed is the wrong word, but I'm just fascinated, I guess, by the fact that we have a shadow political party in this country that does not give itself a name. It's arguably the Tea Party, but it's not. Doesn't give it itself a name, maintains a fairly low profile, and yet is having really genuine, serious, and consequential political impact on not just elections, but public policy. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, the thing is that the Supreme Court and other courts really opened up this spigot for unlimited spending, and the people that benefits are the people with the most money. So the Republican Party raises lots of money from millions and millions of people. I mean, they really raise tens of millions of dollars from small donations that anybody could afford. Right. But the Koch network is fueled by, $1 million plus donations. The only people who are at the table in this effort are people who can afford many times more than the median American income. So it's that they're creating political power simply through having more money than anybody else, as opposed to having a broad base of support or the electorate being on their side.
Yeah, this is what John Paul Stevens warned about in his dissent in Citizens United. Is exactly this, and for that matter, I mean, this is being done by and large by two brothers out of Kansas. Actually, one of them, I guess, lives most of the time in New York City, but it couldn't this just as easily be done by, say, the government of China if they wanted to run it through a front group in the United States?
Well, that would be illegal. Still, there's an open question again with this sort of deregulated space that the Supreme Court created by striking down so many laws that allows corporations to spend as much as they want. And of course, it's not that hard to get foreign money into a corporation, and then have the corporation spend in elections.
Right, that's the front group I was referring to.
Exactly. So there's a question about that would still be illegal, but there's a question about how can it be enforced? How could that be caught?
Especially with the FEC being paralyzed right now.
Right. Is this happening and we don't know about it? I mean, it's still the case that the great majority of the big money in elections comes from identifiable individuals, somebody whose name is on a disclosure form somewhere. Yeah. But there's a significant portion, anywhere from 10 to 20%, or maybe even more. It's sort of hard to know what the denominator is, where we just don't know where it comes from. It comes from some group that simply says, we're XYZ nonprofit, and here's the PO box that's our address, and that's all the public knows about it.
Right, right. We're talking with Ian Vanderwalker. He's the Counsel for the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center for Justice. Just an absolutely spectacular group. Brennan Center has done some of the greatest research published, a nonpartisan organization that has just really, really been keeping track of what's going on with elections. This new report, Election Spending 2016. What do you see as the most alarming / astonishing / important findings of this report?
I think it's really how much a group or an interest group can rise to the top simply based on the amount of dollars it has at its disposal. So we've seen the Koch network take great advantage. There's a small sliver of the American populace represented, but they have a lot of money. The other thing is that the parties, which are supposed to be these sort of broad-based coalitions, they represent, theoretically half each of the American electorate, they're also turning their focus to fundraising through super PACs and these secret money nonprofits, so that more and more, even the political parties are sort of representing this small sliver of people who can afford to give $1 million or $5 million. And that has the potential to turn our politics into, the 10 billionaires on the left are fighting with the 10 billionaires on the right, and giving their money to party operatives, and none of those people is accountable to the electorate in the way that we think our leaders should be.
Right. And we've been here before. I mean, with the Gilded Age and the horrors of the major corporations that came out of the early Industrial Revolution, the Carnegies, the DuPonts, the Morgans, the Rockefeller. The pushback against that was probably the high water mark was 1907, the passage of the Tillman Act, which made it a federal felony for a corporation to give money to a candidate for public office. That, of course, was struck down by Citizens United in 2010. Then we had a second one after the Nixon scandals in 72, 73, after the Church Committee hearings, and a lot of good legislation was passed both to slow the revolving door or even stop it in some cases, and to get money out of politics. And a lot of that legislation was struck down both by Buckley versus Vallejo in 76 and Citizens United. Do you see any sort, and both of those, in both that progressive reformation at the turn of the 19th century, 20th century, and the backlash against the Nixon corruption in the 70s, do you see anything like that forming right now that has the potential to actually legislatively change the political / money landscape the way it has been done in the past?
Yeah, I think we're in the throes of a sort of slow motion, long building scandal. It hasn't been something like the Attorney General going to jail, but people are increasingly aware of this problem, disgusted by this problem, and demanding responses from leaders. And, this presidential election, both in the Democratic primary and to a large extent in the Republican primary, money in politics and the extent to which the rich have too much power over politics was an issue on both sides. And I think that elected officials are going to have to respond to this. Question whether how much we can get out of Washington in the sort of state of gridlock that it's in. But we're seeing, exciting movement in the states in terms of passing increased disclosure laws, passing public financing laws that give people a chance to run campaigns without having to go hat in hand to big donors. So there are positive movements on the horizon, definitely.
Great stuff, and hopefully a lot more to come. Ian Vanderwalker, the website BrennanCenter.org. You can read the report over there. Thanks so much, Ian.
Thank you. Good to talk.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.